Ba-da-da-dun. Ba-da-da-dun. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Commiserate. I'm Dave.
And I'm Sam. I was expecting you to say, I'm your favorite host, Dave.
Now, come on, that bit is so overused.
Well, in this case, no, because I think in this particular moment, you are their favorite host, given the response.
Oh, yeah, yellow pants. Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised, humorously, not arrogantly, but humorously, at the response the TikTok videos got.
Yeah, the snippets of our last episode got
for those of you that don't follow us on TikTok. Number one, you should. Number two, our Knives Out review. We posted a couple of clips on TikTok, and I didn't quite realize the heated debates that started.
Yeah, Mysteries on Demand on TikTok is where you can follow us. Yeah, I just posted a couple snippets because that's a very simple thing you do to drive people to go watch your entire podcast. I made the mistake of posting a clip where I expressed an opinion about Star Wars. And that is all you have to do these days on the internet to start a war.
People just want to fight. They just need an outlet. There's so much pent-up rage, emotionally stunted rage that you gave them a crack. Just like you gave them a little opening and they took it.
And, I will always be happy to express opinions because, look, they generate conversation. I'm not afraid to have an opinion. I just didn't think... I made the mistake of thinking that it's been so long since Last Jedi came out that surely we as a society agree that it's not really a beloved movie. I'm being very careful with my words. And,
Which I think is really funny because when the original trilogy dropped, everyone knew that, instantly, that was something special.
Right.
Episode 4, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. People lined up at the theaters to watch those. Whereas, and they were cinematic masterpieces from the day they released. Whereas the prequel trilogy, episodes 1, 2, and 3, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, those received a lot more criticism upon release. Fast forward 20 years, they have aged like fine wine, better than fine wine. Whereas conversely, the sequel trilogy, everyone, it released to varied results, and I think that attitude is kind of continued. We haven't gone back and said no, they're good, and we haven't gone back and said no, they're trash. We're kind of at this same feeling of maybe confusion. I think that's...
Yeah, I'm curious to see how they will be reevaluated in years to come. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I think that the prequels are cinematic gold. Do I have a spot in my heart for them? Of course, just like I do with any Star Wars movie. But I just said, Rian Johnson, you can't direct a Star Wars movie, but you can direct a murder mystery. And man, the amount of people who were saying, The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie since Empire Strikes Back. The Last Jedi is a cinematic masterpiece, and I'm so tired of people saying bad things about The Last Jedi, and you just... And I was just thinking at the time, where are my fellow millennials at, who I know agree with me, but are not seeing this video? The algorithm was only showing this to people who really, really love The Last Jedi. And they were saying, people now think the prequels were so good and this and this. And I said, I was thinking, I'm not saying that. I was just, okay. I think one commenter worded it better than I did. He said, The Last Jedi is a good movie, but I don't consider it to be a good Star Wars movie. And I said, yes, that. Okay, that's all I'm saying, guys. And you've done your job when you've got people fighting with each other in the comments. There was one debate that was getting pretty nasty in the comments. And, I'm just thinking, guys, can we just focus on the fact, we're all here because we love Star Wars, okay? We don't gotta come for each other like that.
That's what I love about the Star Wars fandom is nothing unites us more than our division. You know, because and I think Dave Filoni had an interesting bit in one of his interviews for, I think, the Clone Wars. He talked about how Star Wars is a very personal experience. So we all had that one time where it's like, oh, we watched A New Hope with our dad, or we watched, Revenge of the Sith with, a family member, and we were like, oh man, this is so fantastic and stuff. And then you kind of build your own personal Star Wars universe and the lore about like Boba Fett, originally in Empire Strikes Back, he only had like one line of dialogue, if that. And he had like 2 or 3. He was only on screen for like a total of like 20 seconds. And yet there's this whole lore and stuff around. So then when you try to go back and tell a story, it's kind of like telling somebody a different gospel, because they've already kind of built this story in their head, these characters, this tale, and then you go back and be like, no, it's kind of like this. And every
people
fan
got upset because people got upset with Boba Fett over their own expectations that they set for Boba Fett.
Which there's no way you can. I mean, the fact of the matter is there's no way you can make everyone happy. But when you have millions, possibly billions of fans, and each one kind of has a slightly unique take on characters, and you go back and try to tell one story, of course you're going to get people mad, Which, granted, the Book of Boba Fett was terrible from a character, and we're just using him as a case study.
You better be careful. You're saying you didn't like something, you're in trouble.
But I mean, and that's what gets me is like, again, Boba Fett, perfect example. They've told, and through the books and the cartoons and the movies, they've told Boba Fett's story multiple times, different ways. And they're finally like, no, this is the canon. This is the Book of Boba Fett. And you're like, you look at all of the other revisions of his story, and you're like, I don't think anyone liked us going with that choice.
No. There used to be, I remember back in the day when the fandom was much more, it was more united, but more so in its hatred of certain things. When the prequels were coming out, I remember checking message boards when I was like 12, 13 years old, when Revenge of the Sith was about to come out. I remember being on a message board and people were saying, George, please don't mess this one up like you did the last two. And everybody was basically on the same page as far as that goes. But now the sequels are so incredibly divisive. All you have to do on the internet these days is go on and express some opinion about Star Wars, and it will just bring people out of the woodwork. But hey, it generates conversation. And that is what we're here for.
We're here for the conversation.
Yeah. And that was in a Knives Out review. And I'm realizing the more that we record these, I'm like, this is a really niche market that we have for talking about Star Wars, but we're also talking about murder mysteries. But clearly there are people there who will take an interest in it.
I'm really hoping Rian Johnson releases a Star Wars murder mystery film.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe have a crossover. They can have who did Daniel Craig play again? In The Investigator.
Benoit Blanc.
Can we have Benoit Blanc show up? I mean, they have enough other cameos in the Star Wars universe, you know.
And when it came to what we were going to start reviewing this week, it was between Glass Onion and another series. We are going to talk about Glass Onion eventually. Yeah. I did go back and rewatch it.
Do know for certain, we will be reviewing the Glass Onion.
I went back and watched it this past weekend and took very extensive notes, but we'll get to that. Because as much as the Star Wars fandom disagrees amongst itself about so many things, if there's one thing the Star Wars fandom seems to agree on, it's that everybody loves Andor. And that's what we're here to talk about.
Andor is, I mean, not even just the Star Wars fans. I think even passive fans or just people that watch it, they're like, this is a good series.
Yeah.
And I think anyway, we're going to talk about it a little bit more.
Well, now that I've said that, I'm sure a lot of people are going to come to the comments and be like, it's actually not that good. But
Okay. My personal opinion.
There we go.
Let's clarify, my personal opinion as a diehard Star Wars fan is that Andor is the best television series, like TV show series that Disney has produced.
Very nice.
I feel like that's a reasonable opinion to have.
It was a pleasant surprise for a lot of people. Like, what do you think made it so successful?
So many. I mean, there's a lot of aspects. Going back, the set design, the lighting, fundamentally the characters. And I know this is kind of our key core when it comes to any writing. Good character development. The world building. I think there's like a lot of things throughout the entire series that they hint at things or they show things, but they don't go. And that's fantastic world building where you just have, for example, in I think episode 1 they have, or episode 2 they have the bell toll, the bell toll guy. And he's just up in this tower, and it's like 5 o'clock, and he goes like ding, ding, ding. Okay, everyone, it's time, end the day.
I want that job.
And he has this whole dance. He's got this like headphone, like he's got this whole like rhythm and stuff, and they just show him doing his job, and then cut away. And that's it. That's like all we see of him for right now. There's no need to go into his backstory or his name or like just the world building, kind of understanding that there's a world outside of our main characters. That is, I find, one of the few ways that you can just involve your viewers, your readers, your listeners into the immersion process of like, oh yeah, this other thing is happening. So that way, when you have side characters or different characters show up, it's not shocking. You're like, oh, hey, hang on, what happened to Cassian? It's like, no, it's just part of the story. It's part of the universe.
I remember when it was being advertised, I wasn't really excited about this show in particular. Rogue One was good, but I can't deny that movie has some flaws, which I will save for another time. We'll review Rogue One another time.
Okay. Because I have some strong opinions on that.
I know.
Yeah.
After Andor season 2, we'll review Rogue One because that's what it culminates.
That seems fair.
But I remember in Rogue One, Cassian Andor was the character who annoyed me the most. I just remember his character kind of being a buzzkill throughout the whole movie and not being much fun. And I feel like he was surrounded by way more interesting characters. I was like, if you're going to give anyone from that film a series, I want to see like kind of a buddy comedy type series with, who's the blind Force user's name? Like,
not she. What's his name?
But you know who I'm talking about. And
him.
I was like, man, I would watch a show with those two. You tell me when and where, I will be there.
Are you kidding me? I'm blind.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Cassie and Andor, I was like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. And I remember seeing trailers for the series before it was released, and they were saying, critics are calling this the best Star Wars series ever. And I was like, okay, but
Chirrut Imwe,
I was like,
by
they've
Donnie
said that
Yen.
about every Star Wars series to this point, so that doesn't draw me in at all. But I'm still going to sit down and watch it because I'll watch anything Star Wars. And I'm glad I did because I was very, very pleasantly surprised.
Which I think, and this is just more from the film, and because that's what we know. That is more what the Star Wars fan base is built on, is the movies. And George Lucas, we know from like behind scenes interviews and stuff, like he didn't just write A New Hope. He wrote this 6-episode episodic space opera. He wrote with fundamental writing techniques about characters and storytelling. Even if the production was kind of janky at times with the sets or the costumes or the people, whatever the case may be, George had good writing. He wrote the thing from start to finish. He knew where he was going to end, which is why he could literally start filming halfway through his opera and still pick up later on. Whereas Rogue One is kind of the not missing piece, but the kind of this way that you can branch, you have all these loose threads on either side of episode 3 and episode 4, And Rogue One just did kind of a nice way of melding it all together in even in like big ways, like getting the data. How do you where, in episode 4, our Bothan spies have recovered this secret data. Okay, well, how? Rogue One goes into that whole, again, this is why I love world building, is you can just hint at a little thing and you can make a whole movie out of it.
Can I just,
yeah, sure.
I don't know if I should save it for the Rogue One review. Maybe I should.
We can always come back to it.
The thing about Bothan spies, I'm going to come back to this because I have so much.
Don't speak bad about Bothan spies.
No,
they were one of the. Actually, I hated that class.
Many Bothans died to bring us.
Yeah, Battlefront 2, one of the best like elite class. But also, I never played as them. They were the worst.
Well, I was when you were talking about George with good writing. George had good writing, but George didn't know how to write good dialogue. And that's my favorite thing about Andor personally. Like, the dialogue is so cleverly written in every scene. I was like, man, I
kind of wanted to talk about this. I watched a Tucker Burke. I don't actually watch a lot of his stuff, but I just kind of like recommended, came up out this one. And his whole video was a little higher level. It was actually a little lame, less technical, more opinion based. But fundamentally, he talked about how dialogue should naturally progress the character, and it should fit the character. It should fit how the character would naturally respond if they were in that situation or circumstance. And that's what kind of, like, all of the characters stay true to their type.
Yeah, everything was very organic. And I think one really distinct thing about the show, and we're going to get into the plot of episode 1, but I felt like whereas every other Star Wars series up to this point was essentially in some way made for kids. Yes, Mando is, a show for adults, but there's a lot of things that make it for kids. It's those series, you got even the Obi-Wan series, the Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian, made for kids, but also fun for adults. And even George Lucas has said at the end of the day, Star Wars is made for kids. This was the first Star Wars series that felt like it was made for adults. Yeah. And you can feel,
which even though
throughout the entire show.
It's rated TV-14, so it's not like it has adult content.
Right.
But in the same way that like West Wing is not like, it's not rated for adults. But the dialogue, the content, the storytelling is more, it's just better viewing.
More mature. What I appreciate about it too, felt like a lot of these Star Wars series were also trying to respond to some type of criticism about Star Wars in some way, whether it was like nitpicks people had about the Force or, poorly written female characters. Andor never felt like it was trying to shove any type of message down our throats. Or
agenda?
It wasn't trying to provide any type of metatextual commentary about Star Wars itself. And they never went for cheap cameos. Looking at you, Mando Season 3.
Or a subject.
If there were any type of cameos, they actually made sense to the story. It just felt like it had more respect for the viewing audience more than any other series. Like, my running feeling as the series progressed was just, I have no clue what's going on, but I just know that I'm invested.
I have to watch the next episode. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny. I saw this, it was this breakdown of like Disney characters. And they kind of had the one reoccurring theme that Disney always does their best when they don't try hard. Mm. Like some of their best female characters or supporting characters or like moral lessons are like in movies or characters where they don't try to push, something. Yeah. And I think that's where Andor is. Like, it's just telling a story. It's not trying to do anything other than that, and it does great. So with that, anything else you want to cover before we delve?
I was saying too, at first I was like, and why would I want to watch a show where I know the main character ends up dying? Like, what's?
Oh, that's to me, that's one of my favorite parts.
Well, I was like, okay, so we know where this is going. So like, do I really need to know? But I mean, the show does respond to that pretty well. And what I like about it too, I think it does the best job of creating gray characters, showing, Star Wars is typically so, good versus evil. Or in recent years, Star Wars has been more about like, hey, the Jedi are bad too. not trying to make the bad guys seem good, but no, like, hey, oh, see, we can make great characters. We can make the Jedi more ambiguous and harder to read. But this show does both sides.
Which, to be fair, I think the moral gray Jedi is kind of an overused trope at this point.
Now it's become overused.
It seems like every show or every movie they make, they have to have this moral ambiguity, and it's like, no. Fundamentally, this entire saga is built on good versus evil.
Yeah, and this series in particular was created by Tony Gilroy, who, as it turns out, wrote all of the Bourne movies.
Oh,
and that makes total sense. You can
like he wrote the screenplays?
He wrote the screenplays and directed one of them.
Oh, okay.
And you can feel that influence a lot throughout the series.
There's a lot of what?
The thing I'm really hoping for, because our plan is to review each episode of season 1 just in time for the premiere of season 2, people. So just rewatch the series along with us. There's clearly going to be spoilers. My biggest hope is, I just really hope they don't try to change this formula for season 2. I hope they don't let that excitement get to them. We saw the newly released trailer for season 2 today, and it had a very heavy focus on the critical reviews. Critics loved it, critics loved it, critics loved it. I hope they don't take that and run with it as in like, oh, see, we can do what we want. Critics loved it for specific reasons.
Well, who was the girl that directed Ahsoka?
Like, don't fix what ain't broken.
Yeah. Well, who was the girl that directed Ahsoka?
There wasn't a girl who directed.
Not Ahsoka. Sorry, the twins, the Acolyte.
I forget her name.
The thing was, they like watching interviews with her. They rewrote all of season 1 based on viewers' responses, like the screening tests, which is a terrible idea. Like, if you spent all the time and money writing a good screenplay, then trust it. Like, I don't think this whole, like, trusting...
Yeah.
I mean, like, I understand, like, re-editing things or going back to the director's table and, like, cutting or fixing things, that's one thing. But, like, literally, in The Acolyte, they didn't have, what's his name, until season 2. And they were like, no, they're like, and that's what I'm kind of scared. Like, whenever they're like, oh, critics love it. I'm like, well, critics also don't always peg things right.
Well, the one thing going for Andor, like in Andor's favor, is they have always planned on it just being a 2-season series. So that tells me that hopefully someone in that creator circle has a big map hanging in their office that they made years ago for this series, and they're just going to stick to that. And
which kind of in my head I like, because Rogue One, you know how it ends.
Yeah.
So there is no, I hate it when a show like leaves a plot, not a plot hole, but like a hook, and they're like, oh, come on, that's just, like a cliffhanger for like a sequel series. And you're like, come on, I didn't come here for 2 or 3 of these. I came for 1. All right. And you're just trying to milk our attention and stuff. You're just going to drag it out. So in this case, it's like I'm glad to know that there's only going to be 2 seasons.
So that being said, let's get into it with season 1, episode 1, Casa, I think it was called, or Casa. However you pronounce it.
Casa, mi casa, su casa.
Yeah. Cassian's Casa is your Casa,
Yeah. So anyway, we'll talk about it, but that was his nickname growing up.
Yes.
Spoiler alert.
I gave
so
them.
I know you gave them, but just like if
had plenty of time to escape. If
you
they
should
hadn't
have
already. Right off the bat, we don't get like an opening crawl or anything, but we see in the corner 5 BBY. Now, I was reading about this after the fact that this was actually pretty significant that they showed this, because it is the first instance in any piece of Star Wars film or television where they actually acknowledge that timeline, BBY versus ABY. That was news to me.
There you go. Mm-hmm. For those that don't know, this is before the Battle of Yavin. That is like the one piece, the one set time that we all know throughout the entire saga. So
which was really like fans kind of created that as a way to,
kind of know the years
sort
and
of way
times
to
and
keep
dates.
track of time in this universe.
It's interesting that Disney's finally acknowledging it, in official stuff. So I love from the first opening shots, you can already tell that this is not your normal Star Wars. There's no opening crawl, the lighting, the dramatic, the kind of moody setting. So we're introduced to pre-Morlana 1. Just kind of a grungy town, grungy planet under the control of the corporate sector.
Yes. And you can feel right off the
agency.
bat there's a lot of film noir inspiration in this, which you and I both love. And of course, film noir, it happens a lot of murder mystery settings. Maybe that's why we were drawn to this show too. Possibly. So our dude immediately heads toward the blue light district, I guess. There's like super strong Tron vibes. There's the bar, the drinks, the lighting, the music. A lot of like Blade Runner influences. And
Mm-hmm. And we're introduced to Cassian.
Mm-hmm. He's looking for his sister in a bar, a place for adults.
We'll call it a bar. So he goes, he gets eyeballed by 2 corporate security agents that start making fun of him, start trying to act tough. And even the one waitress, I guess we'll call her. Waitress is like, pay them no mind. They think they're cops. They think they're all tough, but they're nothing more than just, bravado.
Yeah. So his sister is not there. That's like kind of his entire initial driving motivation. These guards just kind of hate him for no reason, and they stop him in the alley.
They assault him down the sidewalk. It's kind of a cut and dry shakedown.
It's in my pocket. He tells them, I've got the credits in my pocket. And because they are guards in a Star Wars universe, they are automatically stupid. And he beats them up. Then for me, it actually kind of turned into a real murder mystery because Cassian knocks out the first guard, and that guard dies in the struggle. I had to rewind this 2 times because I didn't see where he actually killed this guard.
So he headbutted the guy.
The headbutt is what killed him?
Yeah, the first guy.
That's a pretty
So
nasty
he's
headbutt.
reaching around into the one pocket, and then he reaches around for the other one. Cassian, if you get like blunt trauma to the nose, basically you shove the nose bone into the brain. It's a really horrific, but it's fast. It is fast.
Is that?
Yeah. So he did this. The guy. Are we allowed to talk about that? I don't know. Are we going to get canceled?
Probably.
That's fine. Wouldn't be the first time.
I already got canceled our last episode, so it's fine.
Anyway, so he does this headbutt maneuver.
Times I'm like, you didn't shoot him. Like, this is another like who shot first, Han or Greedo thing. But anyway,
that was a physical altercation. The dude died.
So okay, with that blunt force trauma, are you telling me that just on speculation or EMT experience? It looked like that nasty of a headbutt.
Okay, do you want to pull it up? Quick, stand behind me, okay? We're gonna test this out. Yeah.
Dude, are you okay?
You know how fights go. They go really fast, and things, especially if you're not throwing punches, things, and if you're not used to it, you could get hurt.
So that first guard is dead. The second guard, he offers Cassian a deal that honestly seemed kind of reasonable.
Nah, come on. This guy was literally, he knew what was going to happen next. This guy, they went in for the shakedown. His one buddy's dead. He is literally sitting at gunpoint. He's like, we'll go in together. We'll say it was an accident. But just think about, if they go in and they say, hey, there was a misunderstanding. He slipped, he fell. What are they going to do? They're still going to lock Cassian up. This whole area is just so corrupt. And what are they going to do? Let him go?
Yeah. Well, so at first, I felt for Cassian because whatever happened was an accident. But then he goes and just kills the other guy in cold blood.
Yeah.
So I'm right back. I'm right back where I started with Cassian's character at that point.
Pretty much. I like how the episode summary says he an altercation ensues, leading to Cassian accidentally killing one officer and murdering the other.
Yeah. And then
so after that,
Cassian,
that's a good.
in the aftermath, he's telling everybody, I made a mistake. I made a mistake.
Which he did.
I mean, it was a choice, bruh. But
well, okay, his first mistake was going to try to find his sister, like walking around telling people that he was from like looking for a girl from Canary.
Right. So speaking of, we have some flashbacks sprinkled throughout this episode and the next
There's
two
a
episodes.
lot of flashbacks
To young
in this.
Cassian and his sister on their home planet. Canary. His home
Canary.
planet.
Yeah.
And I was reading about this. I mean, obviously they did want to provide Cassian's origin story, but they were apparently also making these flashbacks as a way to explain Cassian's accent.
French?
Whatever accent it is, I'm afraid to say. I know that Diego Luna is Mexican.
Spaniard?
I know that
Wow.
Diego Luna is Mexican, so
Yeah.
you're trying
Okay,
to
can we
why
just?
he-
It's an amazing accent. Like it
I
just
like the
sounds.
accent.
It's
I like
beautiful.
the accent. But my question is, why do we need to explain people's accents in the Star Wars universe when we have never needed an
because-
explanation? But you gotta let me finish. Why do we need to explain accents in the Star Wars universe now when there have been countless accents in everything we've seen up to this point? No, okay, this guy has an accent. We need to do a flashback to explain all this. Never mind these other characters.
I don't mind having a flashback scene for Cassian's accent, but what I want to have is flashbacks for Tim's accent and for Sergeant Musk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, where are they getting Scottish accents from? This is what I came for.
Yeah, I'm like,
Not
what is
Cassian.
the expected accent to have in the Star Wars universe?
Well, like Twi'leks are French. That's like they're more based on the French Resistance. Okay, that makes sense. And then this and the tribe, I guess you can call on Canary are number one. They're all children. There's no adults, so it's this kind of like Peter Pan utopia. All of their clothes are relics of like Starship. Like they're bright yellows and stuff. They're like kind of tribal, but they have like finished textiles. Mm-hmm. So they don't actually go into any explanation over who or what. I think they do in some of the comics.
Cassian was a lost boy. That's
basically
if you
he's
told me
Peter
that
Pan.
was his backstory. We don't need to do the flashbacks.
That's all you need.
He then goes to his home planet Ferrix. He goes to see his buddy Brazo and says, "Hey, basically, like if anyone asks, we were together last night." And
I love how this conversation goes because it's just it really feels like something you and I would do. Hey, dude, what were you doing last night? I don't know. Went home, had some supper, showered, went to bed. He's like, no, we went out to a bar and then we, disagreed over which one to go to. So then we just went to our place and then we got into an argument and then, I'm like, yeah, that sounds something. Yeah.
And then Brazo, like a true ride or die, just goes with it.
Just accepts it. He's like, yeah, no. And then he starts adding to it. He's like, no. Halfway through, you started making fun of my drink choice. And then we got into an argument. And then we, it's like, those, they're besties, know?
I was having some deja vu when watching that part. But so that's Cassian's cover story. Meanwhile, one of the guys working for that sector, Cyril Karn, who we will be spending,
who is a deputy inspector.
That's what
under the supervision of the chief inspector, reports to him and says, "Here's this case. These two agents got killed and stuff." And the chief inspector is like, "Oh, this is bad timing. This is bad timing because I am going up right now for the Imperial Command Review." And he's like, "This isn't going to look good because the less problems that we have, the more freedom the Empire gives us." Mm-hmm. So he's like, just hide it. He's like, he doesn't say it so much. He's like,
said, just cover it up as an accident. Like, I don't want this to turn into a scandal.
Make them do something, mundane but heroic,
But Cyril
this is killing Cyril. He's like, no, he has that burning, glorious ambition for justice.
And right off the bat, you can tell that he is kind of the bullied one in the workplace. And that's going to drive him to just run with this and run with it and run with it. Yeah. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
So then we cut back to Cassian there on Ferrix. He goes to one of his, I guess, childhood best friends, Bix. who is a mechanic. And he asks her for a lead to her black market contact because he has a NS9 Starpath unit for sale, which is Imperial tech and extremely valuable.
Yes. And we are getting like that's just like our first little kernel that hints at the rebellion that is very slowly building. And I do love this period of time in the Star Wars universe, because when we start with episode 4, it's just the rebellion, but seeing how it was actually a super intense time period and took a lot of work to build up and a lot of secrecy, that tension just
that tension that this is hinting at right now, and they build on throughout with what's his name, with
Stellan Skarsgård's
Mon Mothma and not Cyril.
It's okay.
Luthen. I mean, we're gonna get into that a little bit later, but these characters, the amount of tension that this show carries near the end is palpable. It's just anyway. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So
one note about Bix, I did enjoy their dynamic because I like her character because she's clearly tough and can look out for herself, but they didn't let her fall into the girl boss archetype trope. You know, she, yes, she's a mechanic, but she doesn't talk down to Cassian saying like, hey, hand me that Hydro spanner if you even know what that is, because you're dumb and this, like, she's just doing her thing. And apparently,
again, amazing characters, just true to themselves.
Like she's just living her life. And I was reading the actress, I forget her name, but she said that she didn't believe that her and Cassian had
Arjona.
Okay, cool.
Arjona.
She said that she didn't feel as though Cassian and Bix had any type of romantic past. It was always platonic, but she did feel as though her character had a history of just always choosing Cassian over everything, and she's kind of gotten to a point in her life where she's tired of it, and all he does is cause trouble. And that's why she seems to have kind of settled with this Scottish Tim guy. And I said, I appreciate that.
With two M's. You have to know. Tim. Yeah,
and then the episode just kind of dies down from there. It ends on a flashback with Cassian.
So there's a couple of other flashbacks back to Kanare. There's a starship that explodes in the upper atmosphere and crash lands. The episode ends with the tribal children, the Lost Boys, going out to try to, just investigate. Along the way, Bix sneaks away to go call her black market contact. There are reports that there was a Kanara human on Ferrix about 6 years ago. So we start seeing the cops, they're close on Cassian's trail, and we begin to see Cyril's kind of obsessive nature start coming to the fore, which we're going to see a little bit more throughout the series.
It's a nice way of putting it, but all in all, a pretty solid start to the series.
It's I love how this episode doesn't answer any questions. It just kind of starts populating. Here's Cassian. Here's a little bit of backstory. Here's these characters. There's no cliffhanger. There's no, there's no like big, but you're just kind of intrigued. You're like, all right, what's next?
Yeah. I think it's important to remember too, they released the first 3 episodes all at once. And I was reading, they had basically, because I think there's 12 episodes in the first season. They wrote each of these as like 3 episode story arcs. So like the flashbacks, I think, end after the 3rd episode. When I first started the series, I was like, we're just going to see these nonstop and they're going to be interwoven throughout. But no, that's not the case. But I thought that was actually a clever way of going about it. Looking back, they did kind of do everything in 3 episode story arcs. So
which makes sense.
It takes its time, but keeps the whole series moving still.
Some of my favorite television series have like the kind of the threads throughout the season, but like they do arcs, or they do part 1, part 2, part 3. Mm-hmm. And those are, frankly, 30 minutes for a TV show is not, plus commercials and stuff, that's not enough time to really develop a good story, but like you start throwing in like a 2 or 3 episode arc, that gives the screenwriters enough time to actually develop like a substantial plot, something that you can really kind of sink your teeth into.
Yeah. And so actually, we were talking about this before we started recording. It takes us just as much time to watch this as it does a TV show now, because we've both had to go back to the ad version of Disney Plus.
Oh, so is this our commiseration for the week? Is Disney Plus ads, are ads the commiseration?
I guess so.
I think so. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. It's so actually my family updated to their Disney Plus, and my sister's like, "Oh, why am I spending so much money on this? Let's just do the cheap version." And the cheap version comes with ads, and it's like a 1.5-minute commercial for every like 5 or 10 minutes worth of. I'm like, this is a lot of time we're spending on commercials.
Yeah, everyone in my family, we kind of have this system where one of us pays for one thing that the rest of the family uses. Like my family uses the Hulu that I pay for. The rest of us would use like my brother and his wife's Disney Plus, mom's Amazon. But I don't live near them, and so it kept kicking me out of Disney Plus, and my brother would just go and reset the household. But Disney Plus, unlike any other streaming service I've had, they put a limit on the number of times you can do that because it's Disney and they will control you.
Which is weird because up until now, Disney's been one of the best streaming platforms for that. Mm-hmm. I know Netflix cracked down on password sharing and stuff a couple of years ago, which is fair. That's fair because it got really, a lot of people were just like, sending their, sign in info to group chats and stuff. And it's like, yeah, watch whatever you want, Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, that's a bit obsessive or a bit loose.
Yeah.
Disney, but I'm like, I'm paying this service Netflix for my family.
Fine, but Disney cracking down on that because they want more people to pay for the subscription. Disney, you are not hurting for money, okay? Just let us share the accounts.
Yeah.
And so that finally came to a head today when I went to rewatch Andor in preparation for this. I realized that apparently I've had the basic version of Disney Plus included with my Hulu for the past 6 years and didn't realize it.
Okay, to be fair, that's on you. That's on you. That's not on Disney. It is the basic version, and you still have ads.
So it was my first time experiencing it with ads. But my question was, do they, okay, if they're doing it with TV shows, that's fine because TV shows a lot for ad breaks. But if they do it in the middle of watching movies, I will be livid.
And this has become a point of contention for the modern millennial is, why am I watching ads for a service that I am paying for?
Right.
The goal and the purpose, and I read this interesting article. They talked about how ads are now forced on us. You have to watch an ad in order to earn. Whereas back in the day, you think 50, 60, 70 years ago, ads were made to capture your attention. And if it was not a good ad, you would not watch it, you know? Whereas now it's no, you're sitting there, you sit down, you're going to watch this ad and give us money. I'm like, what kind of dystopian society did we allow this boring dystopia to kind of crawl up on us?
I'll have to see how it goes watching a movie on Disney Plus.
Let us know. I think you're going to be raging. I'm pretty sure there's ads during movies.
If it starts with an ad, I totally get that. If you want to show me, I appreciate sometimes you'll be on Hulu and they'll say watch 3 minutes worth of ads and we won't show any more for the duration of the movie. That's fine. Yeah. But if you're
I do enjoy, I think Amazon Prime does something similar. They'll do this show is brought to you, ad free by this company or this series. And then they'll have a little short ad for that company. And then the rest of the show is ad free, which I'm like, okay, that I like. That works out.
We'll see how it goes. And we'll see how my next experience watching Andor episode 2 goes. And before we sign off, again, let me just clarify. I love Star Wars and I love Rian Johnson. I'm allowed to just have an opinion.
A personal opinion? No, you're not allowed to have personal opinions on the internet.
No, I'm not. You're right. Sorry.
You should have known.
I should have
apologize to the fans right now.
Apologize to the universe. I'm sorry that you were offended by my comments.
All right. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. We're looking forward to Andor season 1, episode 2 next week.
We'll see you then.